John Kuzmich here, checking in with Richard Sussman, author or the co-author of a brand new jazz composition book called Jazz Composition and Arranging in the Digital Age, co-authored by Michael Abeni. Richard is from Upper Nyack, New York, and is a distinguished arranger, composer, teacher. I will let him do the honors, but we have what I call a landmark publication because it synthesizes and does a good job in getting all forms of notation software, sequencing software to interface with the book. Now, obviously, we're dealing with notation here, but we're dealing with composition. So without much ado, I would like to share this book with our readers and give Richard Sussman a chance to have some opportunity to explain why this book is indeed a landmark publication in the jazz education music technology era. So, Richard, we are now on candid camera, and you are looking at yourself and me, and for the best or the worst, I am very proud of this book because it has things in here that I don't know have been replicated by your predecessors, Sammy Nestico, you name it. So I'm going to give you the microphone here just to introduce what differentiates this book from countless others on the subject.
Okay, John. Well, thanks for the nice intro, and I hope that the book can make some contribution to jazz education in general. And basically, what I feel differentiates this book from others is, first of all, there's a lot of great books out there, including Sammy Nestico's. You mentioned Don Sebesky's book is one that I learned with really years ago. But this book is carefully constructed, first of all, so that it can be used as a basis for a introductory college level course curriculum, first and second semester. Secondly, we cover both small groups and large groups, which a lot of the books out there currently don't. They tend to focus either on small group writing or full big band. So the first half of the book is dealing with basically writing for 3 to 4 and up to 6 horns, and then the last part of the book we go to full big band. Let's see. Of course, the obvious, most important twist that I think is unique about the book is that it demonstrates traditional arranging techniques, such as voicing for 8 brass and saxophones, close position, drop 2, all of that familiar stuff. But it presents it within the context of using notation software such as Finale or Sibelius to do the work. And as we both know, that's really the way that things are going these days. More and more people, especially younger kids, are working directly into the computer, and myself included. I came up writing pencil and paper the old-fashioned way, but now I write directly into Finale, and it saves a lot of time. There's a lot of advantages. So I just want to clarify that the book itself is, 90% of the book is really about writing for acoustic instruments. It's not about electronic music or anything like that. Although we cover some, basic aspects of MIDI and MIDI software at the beginning of the book, the primary focus of the book is on writing for traditional instruments, but as I said, within the context of using notation software. So then at the end of each chapter and throughout the book, we have little icons. There'll be a little computer icon or software tips, it's called, and there'll be a little tip of how to do a particular function in both Finale and Sibelius, and additional information on the companion website.
Well, I totally agree because it synthesizes composition with music technology, and it's generic, and generic means we're not stuck with a single product, and because of that, it is a musical treat. So I'm going to get into the music here and go on to the next slide. And can you tell me a little bit about this this example?
Yeah, okay, so sure. So what we're looking at now is example 8.3 from the book, and this is a page from the book. And I think pretty much all the slides now are going to be pages from the book. And I want to mention also again that if you buy the book, you get access to the companion website. So rather than coming with a CD, which was the old school technology up until a few years ago, now what Oxford has done is they've created a companion website. All the audio examples are on the website, so you can, you know, for each musical example throughout the book, if you see that little speaker icon there, it means go to the companion website and you can either stream or download the music example and listen to it. What we're looking at right here is a lead sheet for a tune that I wrote for the book called Analycity, because what this particular example is demonstrating is how to analyze a tune. And if you look closely at the example, you'll see that it's being analyzed both structurally, harmonically, and melodically. And the recording here, incidentally, I also want to mention that all of the recordings, well, not all of them, but I'd say 98% of the recordings of the music examples here were recorded by Manhattan School of Music students or recent graduates 2 summers ago in a marathon 2-day session. And this is an example now just played by a quartet trumpet player with rhythm. And so if you want to click the speaker button, the folks can hear this tune.
And needless to say, I really appreciate the box at the bottom with the analysis and the musical adventure, because the charts are classy and musical and enticing for anyone to want to compose music. So we have now here another slide dealing with the philosophical and aesthetic considerations. Can you expand on that?
Sure. Before I go there, let me just say that that last example on what's on the website actually is we let the guys stretch out a little bit. So it's actually, the whole cut is about 4 minutes long, and they're all like really, there's so much talent at Manhattan School of Music. These guys really sound great, so hopefully the readers will appreciate that. One other thing, just to get back to the first question, is in terms of what sets this book apart, I think we took great care to construct the musical examples to actually sound musical, in addition to illustrating certain the various musical techniques. Another thing that differentiates this book is that I felt it was important, myself and Michael felt it was important to include some familiar material. as the basis for the musical examples. So although we're not going to listen to any of those today, because I'm not sure what how the legal implications of that are, if we're allowed to, if we have permission to stream that over the web, but we use a couple of Rodgers and Hart tunes. I Could Write a Book, My Romance, stuff like that, to illustrate some of the basic principles like close position, drop two, open position, stuff like that. I think that enhances the educational experience for the students, you know, to hear it explained in the context of a tune that they know. Okay, so now philosophical and aesthetic considerations. Okay, let's get back to that slide. So what you're looking at right there now is actually a couple of paragraphs from the very first page of the book, and in fact, Music Has a Life of Its Own is the first sentence in the book. And this, again, is something that both Michael and I felt very strongly about. There's a lot of principles and, you know, quote, rules and so forth, you know, harmonic basics and principles of voicing and voice leading and all that kind of stuff that you would expect to find in this type of a book. But periodically throughout the book, and also right at the very beginning, the first chapter, we start with this, is to make it very clear that the composition or arranging of music is not something that can simply be reduced to a set of formulas. So we keep reminding the reader that these rules and principles are there to provide a foundation for the reader and for the aspiring arranger, but ultimately it's the responsibility of the individual to draw on their own creativity and access this kind of creative zone, which is very difficult to describe verbally. It's much easier to just list rules and principles and that kind of stuff. But we both believe, and I think, you know, anybody who's really a true musician, improvising or not, knows that when you're really there, when you're really performing and you really reach that creative space, you go into some kind of another metaphysical kind of zone. And that's what I'm talking about here, aesthetic considerations and philosophical considerations. So we hope that some of the principles, I'm reading the bottom line here, and techniques presented in this book here will help you on the wonderful journey of exploration that lies ahead. Study, analyze, experiment, listen, create, and enjoy. And use this stuff. This is the book. What's the information that's in the book is a starting point. Okay? Use that to access your own creative space and to create music. That's a very important message.
And I would say this book is greater than just for the college classroom.
Well, I hope so. I think it could be, you know, used and enjoyed and by professionals and amateurs and hobbyists. You know, anybody who's got an interest in jazz, I think can hopefully, you know, find something in the book that they could benefit from. That's the goal.
Now, how did you and Michael Abeni collaborate, knowing that he lives in Germany?
Well, actually, believe it or not, when we started talking about collaborating on something before he moved to Germany. We were both teaching at Manhattan School of Music, and what happened was I was actually, someone from Oxford University Press approached me after I gave a clinic at one of the last IAJE conferences, the last one that was in New York, and when the editor Norm Hershey described the concept, I thought about it, and at first I was a little nervous about making a commitment because I knew it was going to be a lot of work. But then the more I thought about it, an arranging book plus technology it's something that I could do, that I felt I could do, and that I knew that there was a need for because I'd been teaching jazz arranging at MSM, and I also teach the technology classes there too. So I've been on both sides of this fence for a long time. I don't. I'm a jazz musician first and foremost, and that's still what's in my heart. But I've also done a lot of work with music technology, working with Digital Performer, Logic, Pro Tools, all of that kind of stuff. I've done scoring for TV, and I also teach those kind of classes at Manhattan School of Music. So the more I thought about it, the more I realized, this is something that I probably could do if I'm just willing to, leap into the abyss. Little did I know that it was going to be a 4.5-year abyss, but it was a lot of work. Probably the most intense thing I've ever done, but I'm proud of it, and I think it was worth the effort.
Now, your background in music is a little different. You said that you learned in the streets first before you
Well,
became formal. I mean, I think your background is unique as well.
I don't know if I'd say I learned in the streets. I didn't go to a conservatory. I didn't have a traditional music conservatory training. So I went to college, a liberal arts college, for a couple of years, and then I dropped out because I wanted to play music. And so I started playing in bands, and then I went to New York. And but I had some very good teachers along the way. So I studied privately with Roland Hanna. I studied piano with Roland Hanna and Richie Byrack. Uh, and then my first exposure to really writing for big band was I got a gig with Lionel Hampton, with the Lionel Hampton band back in the late 70s. And I asked around. I realized, hey, I could, this is a great opportunity. I could write for big band, but I didn't have a clue. I didn't go to Berkeley or anything like that. So I asked around, who can I study with? And everybody said, oh, call Micah Benny. I didn't know who it was. And so it's kind of ironic or fate in a way that Michael was actually my first arranging teacher, and now here we are a few years later collaborating on this book. And incidentally, I didn't answer fully the earlier question, which is how we collaborated. Was basically I wrote most of the text, but Michael helped tremendously in organizing, the outline to the book, what chapters should be covered, what topics should be covered. And when I would finish a chapter, I'd send it to him. So this is how we worked after he moved to Germany. He got the gig directing the WDR band in Cologne. So I would email him a chapter, and he'd read it and send it back to me with some comments. And then every once in a while, when he was in the States, we'd get together and talk about stuff, go over stuff. And he contributed a ton of really great musical examples, which are scattered throughout the book. So that was pretty much the nature of how we collaborated.
And the selection of music examples, how did that happen?
That basically, for each chapter covers a different musical technique. Like starting with out of voice four horns in close, semi-open, and open position. So that needs a musical example. So, for that one, we took, so every time we felt that there was a need for a musical example, one of us would write something out, and then when it came time to record them, then, that fell in my lap. So I, wrote out all the, did all the parts in finale.
Well, I like that because everything was customized for the text, so the text and the music went together like a horse and carriage. You didn't have any difficulty there. The book generated music, and music it is. Now,
Yeah.
speaking of music, I think I'd like to have a treat now and go through several of your musical examples here. Can you explain this one?
Okay, so this is example 992A. So the particular technique we're demonstrating here. Now this is the same tune that we heard before in example 8-3, but what we're doing now is we're taking the melody and we're harmonizing it for 4 horns. So this is one of the most important techniques that I think any arranger needs to learn, is how to take a single melody line and color it by harmonizing it with different with 3 or 4 or more instruments. And there's some specific techniques that you can use, and we list them in chapter 9. There's 5 of them altogether, and if you look on the example there, you can see that the different various techniques are illustrated. And so this first example, 9-2A, illustrates this melody and how much more colorful it can be made by harmonizing the passing tones or approach tones in between the notes that fall on chord changes. Then the next example, 9-2B, is going to be the same thing, but without reharmonizing the approach tones. So what we could do is actually, since I've explained the next slide, you could just play this and then go to the next slide and play the next slide. And I don't have to say anything in between. And what I'd like the viewer, the listener, whoever's watching this interview, to see if you can, by listening to the examples, see how much more colorful this first example sounds than the example that follows it. Okay, so also throughout the book, we'll give not only examples of the correct way to do things, but also an example of what it sounds like if you do it the wrong way or the less than ideal way. So this is a case in point of that.
Okay, here's the example. And then here's the second example.
This is what happened.
Now, we have another example here in a bossa nova. Do you have some comments to share about this example?
Yeah, sure. So anyway, hopefully, like I said, the viewer here can. It's not that example 9-2B sounds bad. It doesn't sound bad. It just sounds a little boring compared to the first version. So then what we did was at the end of each section, there's basically 3 sections. So the first section is writing for 3 and 4 horns. The second section is writing for 5 and 6 horns, and the third section is writing for full big band. And at the end of each of those sections, we present an example of a full chart. Okay, analyzed, and just for the reader to hopefully get something out of seeing how the whole thing is put together. So what we have here, example 14.2, is a bossa nova that I wrote and arranged for 4 horns. And you don't have to play the whole thing. Just play a little bit of the intro there, and maybe just what we're looking at, the first page.
Because there'll be a second page, but I think the music will have stopped when I click pages. So
yeah, well, I think that's on the next example. But also, if you buy the book, you'll hear the whole chart, including with an alto solo, improvised solo and everything in backgrounds. So this is just to give the viewer a little preview of what they'd be getting if they buy the book.
Excellent. And now we have another selection here. How does this differ?
Okay, so this is an example at the end of the second section. We provide two examples that are complete arrangements of for six horns. One is from Joe Lovano's 52nd Street Themes CD, and the tune is "On a Misty Night" by Tad Dameron. We got permission to use the print arrangement, although we didn't include an audio recording of it because I say in the book a number of times, if it's out there commercially available by a living composer of our generation, you guys support, let's support these guys. These are some of the great artists, and I feel very privileged that I was able to get permission from Joe and a few other people like Randy Brecker and Jim McNeely and Bob Mintzer to let me use some of their music and analyze it. But I tell the reader, look, for this one, just go to iTunes and spend 99 cents and download the recording and support our artists. So this one, however, this is a tune by Michael Abeni. So anything by myself or Michael Abeni, you can download and listen from the website. So this is an example of a tune that Michael wrote for the book. It's a six-horn chart called Minor Infraction, and you can play a little bit of that.
Needless to say, very tasty.
Yeah, and that's just to show that this is a reduction of the full chart, and the whole thing is there in the book, and there's a little computer icon there also, which means that you can go to the website, and if you want, you can download a PDF file of the full score. So that's available also.
Well, excellent. Now we've got the 8 brass.
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones here. This is what this demonstrates is a very basic technique of how to voice for 8 brass in close position to achieve that kind of classic, what Don Sebesky used to call the bassy sound. And you see that the trombones are doubling the trumpets an octave lower, and if you click on the speaker icon now, you'll hear what sounds kind of like an old bassy Frank Foster kind of.
Yes, that is good. Now, how do we add saxophones to this brass?
Well, that's the next page. Okay, so if you go to the 22.3 or 23.3 rather, chapter 23 is how do you add saxophones to the brass. So all of the various techniques are explained in the text, and this is the musical example that illustrates it. So you can play that one and hear how the same example we just heard for 8 brass sounds a little fuller when you add the saxophones to it.
And now you have flirted with everything but big band here. Do you have some musical examples to share with us?
Well, if you want to go to the next slide, there's a little bit. Let me see what I put up there. Yeah, this is a chart that I wrote a few years ago as a tribute to Thad Jones, and what you see in the book there is just an example of the head, but what I gave you in the PowerPoint presentation is a little bit of the whole intro leading into the head. So if you hit the speaker button, the people can hear, 20 or 30 seconds or whatever. It's up to you of one of my charts.
Very good. Now, you've got a lot going on in this book, wielding composition from part writing to big band. Now, when it comes down to it, how much of the book deals with music techniques and how much with technology?
Well, I would say probably 95% of the book deals with techniques of writing for acoustic instruments. Maybe 90%.
Now, the magical question is, and you skirted about it, is this book can work very well with Sibelius, can work very well with Finale. Uh, I know you can't recommend one over another because they're both excellent. They both do the job, and yet they're both a little bit different. Any comments about why you chose Finale and Sibelius?
Well, sure, they're the two, unquestionably, without any doubt, Finale and Sibelius are the two most popular notation programs on the market today. There are some other ones, but they're not. Either they're used exclusively by the engraving industry, like Score, or there's some newcomers that haven't quite caught on yet. So basically, the publisher said told me I've got to give equal time to Finale and Sibelius. Now, it just so happens that I'm a Finale user, but that's because when I got started, there was no Sibelius. Finale was there first, and I learned Finale. And after spending many years struggling and learning all the shortcuts, I really don't feel like taking the time to learn another software platform now. I had to learn a little bit of Sibelius to write the book because, like I said, we did give equal time to both platforms, and they're both great programs. You can accomplish the result in either program. Some of it's subjective, and some of it's what you start with. So, there seems to be a trend among younger students to lean towards Sibelius because it's got a somewhat easier learning curve at the beginning. But, and I want to stress at the beginning because the the warning, if you're thinking about which platform should I learn, ultimately, when you get to the more advanced levels of music notation, they're both pretty complicated. If you want to do it right, you got to sit down and spend some time learning the tricks and the shortcuts and that to really make it look right.
Well stated. What styles of music are included in your book? Now we saw the bossa nova, obviously big band. We have the bassy. Any delimitations you want to make about what's covered?
It's the book is pretty much, as you can guess from the title, leans pretty heavily towards more straight ahead jazz, but the techniques could be applied to almost any style of Western music, including rock and techno or R&B. I mean, personally, I've done a lot of gigs as a keyboard player for pop and rock groups, and I've also done arrangements for in that style. Uh, as far as the actual examples we use in the book, most of them I would say are lean towards the straight ahead or the more modern kind of jazz vibe. There's a bossa nova. There's a Randy Brecker gave me one kind of funk tune that we look at. But the way you voice the horns is very similar. There's a chapter on arranging for vocalists, and we got permission to use Michael Benny's arrangement of "Who Cares" for Patty Austin for the Grammy-winning Avant Gershwin album. So that's a different style right there. But John, I'll be honest with you. In my mind, I don't like to think in terms of styles. To me, there's two kinds of music: good and bad. I don't care what style it is.
Well, you're very honest and very open and practical, so I salute you there. Now, you got to tell me a little bit more about your companion website. Namely, will it be updated? Because that's open-end architecture, and I like that with a textbook, is that the author has options after the fact, not just to get the book out and meet deadlines.
Well, this is really attractive for this type of book. In fact, for any type of book where you're writing about the technology, as we all know, the technology has been changing so fast, and it just seems to keep accelerating. Like every it used to be you could stay on one version of software for 2 or 3 years. Now there's a new version almost every year or more. So what the companion website gives us an opportunity to update as new versions of these programs come out, to update the software tips. So that's why the what's in the book in the print version is just only the software tips that are so basic and fundamental and so much a part of the interface of those programs that it's unlikely that that's going to change anytime soon. Everything else is on the website. So now when finale 2012 comes out, hopefully, I mean, the plan is to upgrade it at least every 6 months to a year, ideally. That's what I'd like to see.
Will there be a sequel?
Oh, now that's a that remains to be seen. I just finished this a few months ago, and man, it was a lot of work. Like I said, it's probably the most intense thing I've ever done. So right now, I'm not thinking about writing another book anytime soon. I'm focusing on writing music and getting back to that. Let's see how this does. How this one does.
Well, how long has the book been out? And have you gotten any reviews or reactions or feedback?
Yeah, the book's been out since January 2012. So far, we've got one really good, really nice review on Amazon.com from Jeff Sultanoff, who used to work at Hal Leonard for years. And some of the best feedback I've been getting is actually now that the book's out, and I do teach 2 arranging classes at Manhattan School of Music. I teach an undergrad and a graduate arranging class, and now actually I can use my book in the class, and basically I'm getting pretty good feedback from the students who seem to appreciate that it's all there, and they can go to the website and listen to the examples, and it makes my job a lot easier too. I just want to also say that what's of at least equal importance to me is some of the endorsements that we've gotten, from the final version of the book that was sent out to various people before it was released, which are on the back cover, and that's what the slide we're looking at right now displays a couple of those, and I feel very fortunate to, a lot of these guys have been friends of mine for years, but Bob Mintzer and Gil Goldstein, Rich DeRosa, they all had some really nice things to say about the book. So if you want to.
Well, Bob Mintzer is a legend in and of himself. Jazz composition and arranging in the digital age is a must-have for anyone who plans to be a jazz musician, and that's a bit more encompassing than just an arranger or composer, but a jazz musician, which is indicating that there's an education involved in going through this text that is greater than just composing music. So that's a musical tribute to the book that I say is pretty hard to top. Although Gil Goldstein said both you and Michael Labeni have created not only an encompassing look into techniques and methods for realizing a musical arrangement in the 21st century, but I would add getting closure on how to produce it using technology. Now, from my point of view, what level of abilities would you suggest the user of this book be? Could he be an entry-level Finale Sibelius user, or should he be already an intermediate or an advanced user?
Well, first of all, this book could be uh, appreciated and I think used by somebody who knows nothing about either program, because the the examples are there in print, and you can download PDFs of a lot of the stuff on the website too. But it's helpful if the student has, first of all, some basic knowledge of basic jazz theory. I would say that would be helpful. So in other words, a knowledge of chords and chord scales, basic jazz theory would be helpful. And sure, if they know, I would say somebody who's at a beginning level of either Finale or Sibelius would have no problem jumping in, and they could use some of the exercises in the book to learn the software program too.
And I think that's an incredibly insightful statement, because in this day and age where elite people do things complicated and it's the masses that you're trying to reach, and your book can be used by any level, not only with their music background but with their computer background. And that's why I consider it to be a landmark publication, because it's a book for all seasons, literally, not just for an advanced user. And its productivity speaks for itself when you can learn the software and learn the composition tools all under one umbrella. And I just think that is what makes this book so unique. And then the final quote by Richard DeRosa: "This is one of the most comprehensive books ever written on the subject, and detailed, helpful hints on using Finale or Sibelius make it the book to use in this new century." And that to me is a mind-boggling. Know that Bill Russo wrote a good book, Sammy Nestico, you mentioned some others, but this one takes it up into the 21st century, and all the examples are there, and you've got instant interaction with the book. And to me, that's what makes this book so magical.
Well, thanks, John. I really appreciate that, and hopefully lots of other people will feel that way.
Well, I'm not going to let you go unless you tell me about your publishing company, because I'm sure that the reader is going to want to know more about your compositions and availability. So if you don't mind doing a commercial thing, but before you do, I want to make sure that everybody knows that this book is published by Oxford University Press, and at the bottom of the screen we have the website. And if you want to go and look at Richard's website and send him email and look at whatever else he's got there, both of those should be well endorsed. So I'll give you the last word, Richard, because it's only fitting that you promote yourself and tell us about your publishing company.
Okay, well, I've got a couple of companies actually, but the website is richardsussmanjazz.com, and I have Richard Sussman Music, and then I've got Union Street Music. But in terms of jazz, this is the website you want to go to. And also, I've got a lot of I've done a lot of small group recording and writing. So, to do a little plug here, I just completed a new quintet recording with Randy Brecker, Jerry Bergonzi, Mike Richmond, and Jeff Williams. That should be out on Origin Records in June. That'll be called Continuum. And on my website, I'm going to make sure that I have some of these charts available for purchase from the website, which means this will hopefully finally give me some incentive to update my website, which is a couple of years out of date right now.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your work with us, and may this be an inspiration to those in the field that there is new ways to learn, and not only new ways to learn, to incorporate technology to create a greater project. And I don't know anything better than to go out with your music. So if you don't mind, I'm going to let it swing, and we can all sit back and listen to why this book is such a musical thing.
Let me tell them what they're going to hear. This is one of the last examples in the book. It's a great chart by Michael Abeni called Uncertainty, and it's at the very end of the book where we have a couple examples of full big band charts. So this is Michael Abeni's Uncertainty.